Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, over 290 days ago, I ran back to Hamas, brutally murdered more than 30 Americans and took a dozen more hostage. Today, 8 of those kidnapped on October 7th remain in the Gaza Strip, held captive by an inhumane terrorist group that wants nothing more than the death and destruction of Israel and the United States. Edan Alexander, Itai Chen, Sagi Dekel Chen, Hirsch Goldberg, Poland, Gadi Haggai, Judith Weinstein Haggai, Omer Nutra, Keith Siegel. 8 of our fellow Americans, 5 of whom we believe to still be alive, are being held hostage right now, today. And yet too many people are seemingly unaware of this reality. It's shameful. And today I am working to help change that and refocus the attention on our hostages and their families. As a mom, my heart aches for our hostage families. I simply cannot imagine the pain and the fear of waiting to hear if my daughter is alive and if I will ever be able to see her again and utter 2 simple but warm words: welcome home. These families, who I've repeatedly met with here in D.C. and in Israel, have waited far too long to be reunited with their loved ones. Every day that passes puts our fellow citizens at greater risk and diminishes our chances of bringing them home safely. Mr. President, I am grateful for the opportunity to honor and rightly recognize our U.S. hostages. This is an issue that I have gained support from my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats alike. We all want to see each and every one of our countrymen released and have consistently urged the administration and those negotiating on behalf of the families to use every tool possible in our toolbox. Hirsch Goldberg Poland is a dual U.S.-Israeli citizen born in Berkeley, California. When he was 7, his family moved to Israel. His parents, John and Rachel, describe Hirsch as funny, with a dry sense of humor. He was a lover of soccer, music, reading, and travel. Hirsch even turned his passion for soccer into an opportunity to build bridges between Arab and Israeli students. Days after turning 23, Hirsch and his close friend attended the Nova Music Festival along with thousands of other young people. Before Hirsch left his house, his mother recalls his last words: "I love you. See you tomorrow." "291 days. And tomorrow has still not yet come. for the Goldberg-Poland family. On October 7th, while at the Peaceful Music Festival, Hirsch and his friend were forced to flee for their lives as Hamas terrorists opened fire, killing more than 364 attendees. Mr. President, put yourselves in their shoes for just a second. 1 minute you're at a concert, enjoying live music, maybe dancing to the beat, and in an instant, your life changes. Rockets are flying overhead, guns blasting right and left, smoke, fire, chaos, and total confusion follow. Hirsch and his friend escaped the festival and ran into a nearby bomb shelter, a place to seek refuge from the attacks. And after likely breathing a very temporary sigh of relief, Hamas threw a grenade inside that very shelter to maim and kill more innocent Israelis. Tragically, Hirsch lost part of his arm due to the shrapnel from that grenade. And even more gut-wrenching, his dear friend lost his life. Recent footage released by the Israeli government showed Hirsch being taken that day, with his arm wrapped in a tourniquet that he fashioned himself out of part of the shirt that he was wearing, as Hamas fighters threw him into the back of a pickup truck, lifted his head up by his hair as he sat there dazed and bleeding in order to take selfies with him, and drove him and the other hostages into Gaza. Sagi Dekel Jen. Sagi is a 35-year-old dual Israeli-American citizen who grew up in Bloomfield, New Jersey, and is the grandson of Holocaust survivors. For the past 10 years, he worked on a project to convert old buses into mobile classrooms for underserved communities in southern Israel. Sagi was working near his kibbutz Nir Oz home on October 7th when he noticed the Hamas terrorists entering the kibbutz. After ensuring his wife, who was pregnant with their third daughter, and children were safe, he joined the kibbutz security team to defend his community. His wife heard Sagi fighting off the terrorists, but despite their efforts, Sagi was taken captive. We know from hostages who have returned that Sagi has been seen in Gaza, and we pray for his immediate and safe return. Since being held by the Hamas regime, his wife gave birth to their new daughter and named her Shakar, which in Hebrew means dawn. We pray that the hope of this new life continues to bring light to Sagi's family as they wait in great anticipation for the day when they can all be reunited and a father can meet his precious daughter for the very first time. Mr. President, Sagi and Hirsch's stories are unthinkable for many Americans, but they're true. It's no myth. It's reality, one that no one should turn a blind eye to. Hamas is a brutal regime, one that rapes women and children and preys on innocent civilians, and one that we cannot trust to provide our fellow citizens who remain in Gaza with proper medical care and attention. While the hostage families remain ever hopeful as I am, that they will one day be able to embrace their loved ones again, it is incumbent upon the administration, especially at this crucial time, to remain focused on freeing our American hostages. At a minimum, President Biden and Vice President Harris should say their names, share their stories, and be unafraid to tell the truth about Hamas and the need for Israel to fully destroy this Iran-backed terror regime. Today, my colleagues and I are standing up for these hostages and standing with their families and our friends in Israel. We remain committed to bringing our American citizens home now. This goal should not be diminished. Every second counts. And joining me today on the floor are many of my colleagues. And at this time, I would like to yield the floor. I'll yield the floor, Mr. President, to my colleague from Iowa, Senator Grassley.
Senator from Iowa.
Thank you, Senator Ernst, for bringing this and continuing to bring the plight of the hostages to our attention. I'm glad to join you in speaking about just one of these, Eden Alexander. He grew up in northern New Jersey. He was a champion swimmer for his high school team and a big fan of the New York Knicks. Eden also had close ties to Israel. He was born there, had grandparents there, and had his bar mitzvah there. Still, his mother was surprised when Eden announced his senior year in high school that he wanted to postpone college and go to Israel. Eden joined a program for young Jewish adults who want to explore serving in Israel's Defense Force. Eden and 16 other American high school graduates, including a classmate from his high school, moved to a kibbutz in Israel. There, they did 4 months of training before committing to serve in the IDF. Eden returned for a visit home in August and expected to return again in April for his brother Roy's Mar Mitzvah. He was on patrol at the kibbutz on the morning of October 7th. He called his mother after the Hamas terrorist attack began. She said, "I'm here, I'm with you, I love you, just protect yourself, just be safe." That's the last she heard from her son. Eden needs to come home now. I yield.
I will yield this time now to a very, very good friend and a fellow co-lead to the Abraham Accords Caucus, Senator Jackie Rosen of Nevada. Thank you, Jackie.
Senator from Nevada.
Thank you, Senator Ernst. I appreciate it. Mr. President, 291 days. That's how long it's been since families of those being held hostage by Hamas have been not able to hug their loved ones. 291 days. 9.5 months of not being able to rest, to sleep, to breathe. 9.5 months of heartbreak. 9.5 months of agony beyond imagination. I have met with these families in Israel and here in the Capitol many times since October 7th, and my heart is shattered with each and every single conversation. And each time I've met with them, their ask is clear, that we, the United States and the international community, do everything we can to help them reunite with their loved ones. Their resilience, their strength, their perseverance, it is nothing short of extraordinary. Hostages who've survived and been released have shared stories about their inhumane treatment, being kept in dark tunnels with little to no food to eat, some even being tortured, not knowing if they would live or die, not seeing the light of day, and surely not knowing if they'd ever see their beloved families again. We've also seen evidence of Hamas's use of sexual violence both on and after October 7th, including women who were raped in captivity. While some hostages have been reunited with their loved ones in the last few months, there are still families, including those of 8 Americans held hostage by Hamas, who have yet to be made whole again, and we will not forget them 291 days. And there are families whose ability to see or hug their loved ones have been taken away forever by Hamas terrorists, their loved ones having died at the hands of those terrorists, like the family of Itai Khan. I met with Itai's father, Ruby, just days after the October 7th terrorist attack. As a mother, as a Jew, and as a human being, my heart broke when hearing about Itai's story and the unimaginable pain his parents are carrying. They are with us here at the Capitol today. I want to apologize. I'm sorry I have to give this speech. I know how much you loved your son. Itai was multi-talented, fun-loving, a Boy Scout who played basketball. He was an American who served in the Israeli Defense Forces and was only 19 years old when Hamas launched its brutal terrorist attack on October 7th, when Hamas murdered him. For months, we didn't know about Itai's condition, whether he was held hostage or even if he were alive. We held out hope. But the unimaginable heartbreak of going through this nightmare, it didn't stop Ruby. Never stopped Ruby. He's come to Congress multiple times to remind us of our responsibility to his son and to all of the hostages being held by Hamas. His strength, your strength, Itai's parents, your resilience, it is an inspiration to us all. Earlier this year, we learned Itai was one of the many souls who Hamas brutally murdered. Again, beyond imagination. And while it has been reported that he was killed 291 days ago, his body is being held captive by the Hamas terrorists who murdered him. And this has denied Ruby, has denied Itai's parents and his family the right to bury him, to mourn him, and to sit Shiva for him. It matters to family. He and his wife Hagit and Itai's siblings, they've just been forced to live in grief and in limbo. And it's a tragedy that no one should ever have to go through. There is a proposed deal to free the hostages, and with reports of progress in these negotiations, now is the time to see it through to the end. We must free the hostages for Itai, for his family, for the 7 other Americans held by Hamas for the remaining 120 hostages from 24 countries. Hostages who are Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist, who are someone's sons or daughters, sisters or brothers, mothers, fathers, loved ones, who Hamas refuses to release. These are someone's loved ones. Hamas refuses to release them. And as we continue to pursue every viable path to bring them home, we will hold them in our hearts and hold Hamas's feet to the fire. We stand with the hostages and their families. They are not forgotten. Our work isn't done until we bring them home. Thank you again, Senator Ernst, for putting this all together today. I yield.
Senator Rosen, and joining our colloquy now is the senior senator from Maryland, Ben Cardin.
Mr. President.
Senator from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to thank Senator Ernst for arranging this time. This is a critical moment. We are close to having a deal where the hostages can be released. It's important that we all speak out, so I want to thank Senator Ernst for raising this time. To Senator Rosen, thank you for your incredible leadership on this issue. I thank you for your comments, and I certainly concur in those comments. We just left meeting with the hostage families that are here. I've been meeting with the hostage families regularly since October the 7th. I first want to acknowledge their courage for putting a face on these issues and motivating us to do more. I made a commitment when I was in Israel in October that I would do everything in my power to get the hostages released. And every day I look at opportunities, I ask my staff to look for opportunities, and we can get the hostages released. Let me make this clear. Hamas is responsible for the hostage being taken them. They never should have. Some died under their custody, and there's still hostages that haven't been released after 291 days. I had the opportunity to be in Buenos Aires last week, representing the United States at the 30th commemoration of the bombing of the Jewish Community Center, where 85 lost their lives. It was a very moving ceremony in which the families of the victims of the Jewish Community Center bombing spoke. They wanted to make sure we never forgot the names of those 85. And they demanded justice. It's been 30 years, and justice still has not been handed down to Hezbollah and Hamas and Iran, who were responsible for those attacks. Well, we're demanding the release of the hostages that were taken on October the 7th, and we will not forget their names. The 8 Americans that have not yet to be accounted for. Omar, I just met his family, 22-year-old, born leader, grew up in Long Island. He was the regional president of the United Synagogue Youth and captain of many sports teams, being held by Hamas. We've heard about the others. Ittai, Eden, Hirsch, Sangai, Keith, Judith, and Gotti. They're just the 8 Americans that are being held. All the hostages need to be released, and they need to be released now. 291 days. It's outrageous. So, Mr. President, I wanted to join Senator Ernst today to make it clear there is no justification for the holding of the hostages. We have an opportunity to reach an agreement. Let's do this. Let's get it done. Let's get the hostages home. Let's hold the perpetrators accountable for the atrocities that they have perpetrated. And let's find a path for real security and peace in the Middle East for the Palestinians and the Israelis. There is no room for peace in the Middle East with Hamas. They need to be held accountable for these atrocities, and the hostages need to be released today. Let us all join together in unity to get the hostages home. With that, I yield the floor.
Thank you, Senator Cardin. Thank you for your leadership. Senator Ted Budd represents the great state of North Carolina. He is unable to join us, but he did want to make sure that we read his constituents' bio. 8 of these remaining hostages are Americans. Our final American hostage is a native of the state of North Carolina, and his name is Keith Siegel. I have joined North Carolina Senator Ted Budd in meetings with the families of hostages as well as former hostages like Keith's wife, Aviva. Keith and Aviva have 4 children alongside 5 grandchildren. We've heard their stories, and I can attest that Senator Budd and I look at their photos every single day. We've heard the stories, and these families must absolutely live with horrible pain, and they have an uncertainty that is absolutely unacceptable. The fact that we stand here after 291 days and the fate of these 8 innocent souls is not the primary topic of conversation on our national media and from the current administration is shameful. Now is the time for all nations to rally together and use all available pressure to force Hamas terrorists to release all of our hostages. I do want to thank my colleagues, Senator Rosen, Senator Cardin, and Senator Grassley for coming to the floor and joining in this colloquy to ensure that the American people don't forget that we have 8 Americans that are still being held. Let's bring them home now. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.